Hello, and welcome to Our American Government. I'm your host, Mr. Samuelson. Today's lesson is a dig into the Federalists. What was their main ideas? How did they want our government to be shaped? This is done in support for our Unit 1 DBQ. Let's start by looking at the Articles of Confederation and the mess that they were. The idea of the Articles of Confederation was that it would create this loose alliance of the states. So we'd have these 13 independent states who would act together on certain important issues. But it really was a weak alliance, and states regularly ignored national issues. Taxation was a big problem. Disputes between states were getting to be a big problem. But Shays' Rebellion really was the tipping point. This was a rebellion in Massachusetts where Massachusetts was threatened. The national government, under the Articles, tried to raise an army to help them, and just nobody would chip in, at least not enough to actually resolve the issue. Massachusetts had this festering problem for a while, and eventually were able to deal with it mostly on their own. But a result of this was that a convention was called to amend the Articles. Everybody had realized this is really weak, and we need to do something about this. So they gathered together this convention, this meeting of the states. Now, James Madison from Virginia arrives at that convention with a plan for an entirely new government. He basically has the idea that the Articles of Confederation are garbage. It's time to throw them away, forget about them. Let's look at something completely new. And he presented to the convention a plan for a much stronger federal government, where we wouldn't really just be an alliance of states, we would be one united nation. Now, at this constitutional convention, we had delegates from almost all the states. Rhode Island didn't show up to it, but everybody else did. And they mostly accepted Madison's plan. There was a lot of argument about representation in the legislature and a few other issues that they had to iron out. And we covered that in another lesson. I'm not going to hash it out here again. But what we need to know here is that mostly they agreed with Madison's plan, especially the part about the stronger federal government. And they created the Constitution of the United States. But they were not empowered to actually put this in place to be the government of the United States. The states had to agree to that. And so it went to the states. Now, Madison and a few others who became known as the Federalists wanted to make sure to present their case to the states and to the people. And so they wrote a series of essays, all of which supported and explained what this new Constitution was. So all these essays tried to argue that this was a good government and that this was a necessary government. And altogether, Madison and Alexander Hamilton and John Jay created 57 essays to explain and support the Constitution. And these essays really did a lot to help convince the states that a stronger federal government was in fact needed, that it wouldn't be a tyranny like the government of Great Britain had been. That is, the government's not going to impress you. And it does convince the states that they need to give up some power to make this a reality. Well, the debate in the states took almost a year. It takes a long time for the states to really come around because they have to listen to the Federalist arguments. They're also listening to the anti-Federalist arguments. We're going to get more into the anti-Federalists next, but the anti-Federalists, the basis of their argument was that the Constitution created a federal government that was too strong. And they had to, get rid of that, go back to the Articles, or at least try something new. Now, in the end, the Federalists are going to win this argument. It was a struggle. Certain states fell in line pretty quickly. Others, like Virginia and New York, it took a lot of arguing, a lot of debate, and it was a close vote in both of those states. But once Virginia and New York were on board, 11 of the 13 had agreed, and they moved forward with the Constitution. North Carolina will agree fairly quickly. Rhode Island takes a little bit longer, but eventually they fall in line too. So those were the Federalists. believed that the Articles of Confederation were too weak. They met at that convention. James Madison was their leader early on. They argued for a stronger national government. They published the Federalist Papers and eventually won the argument, convincing the nation that we needed a stronger central government. That was all for our American government today. Farewell.